I've gotten some questions emailed to me by Matt Bennett, who of course runs the Metals Investor Forum for us. I'm just going to go through them. I'm going to go through them in the same order as the presentations for now, anyway, unless something else comes in. I'm just wondering, Ian, one thing that people may be curious about is, of course, being in Alaska. People think Alaska, they think Golden Triangle, they think short season. You actually got a pretty favorable setup, and I realize that, how early you start things and how late you go in any given year. It's going to depend on, this year COVID put a kibosh on things, but you've got, in theory at least, a fairly long season given how far north you are, just because of how close you are to the coast, right?
Essentially where we are, I mean, if you were to draw a line across, we're down below northern British Columbia, being down southeast in Alaska. The drill season for us has so far never been an issue. We've always sort of gone from June to the end of October, and that's more of a function of availability of exploration dollars over the last number of years for juniors. As that, we hope, continues to maintain its pace and maybe improve, we'll look to get in there earlier next year.
Okay. And I just want to. The next question is for Greg, and I'm showing you as muted right now. Thanks, Greg. I had several of the same question came up, which I guess isn't that surprising, and that's a lot of people wonder about the political risk, political environment in Ethiopia. Can you make some comments about, about the form of government and your sense as someone operating there, in terms of security and that sort of stuff?
Sure. Well, we are in the Tigray province, which is very stable. We don't have security on our projects or in any of our activities, buildings, warehouses. There was yesterday elections in Tigray. So there was supposed to be in the country federal elections in August. Now they were postponed due to the COVID pandemic. However, the Tigray province went ahead with elections, and they were held yesterday. We should have results in a few days. It made a lot of news, but our guys on the ground there, both in Addis Ababa and in the province of Tigray, in the town of Shari, said everything is normal. Everything is just your usual politics. There has been unrest in Ethiopia in the last 6 months, mostly in two regions to the south, Somali region, which is next to Somalia, and the Oromia region. There was a famous, well-known singer murdered, and it caused some unrest, political unrest. But generally speaking, they're working towards elections. This is, it's par for the course from what we've seen since we've been there in the last 4 years. Our challenge is bureaucracy. Ethiopia is heavily bureaucratic. It's different than West Africa. You have to follow the process. We feel we are getting good at it. One of the keys is to recognize some of the long lead times to get equipment into the country and anticipate that and start early. So that's we're working around that the best way we can. Okay.
Thanks, Greg. Next question for Mike. There are actually several questions for Vizsla. Seems to be popular today. I'm going to dispense with the first question, which was essentially asking you where the share price was going to be in 1 year and 5 years. I'll just remind the questioner that it's actually illegal for Mike to answer that question. So we're just going to go right by that one. A lot of people wonder about timeline to production. I mean, you walk through obviously what the deal is on Rio Panuco, but maybe some sense of, I mean, if you guys know, I mean, obviously you've done some due diligence, what kind of shape are things in, if you wanted to, and you made the decision to exercise, how quickly do you think you could move things forward? And then there were also several questions about the veins being narrow, and will it be difficult to work up a resource and get continuity and stuff. One thing I will add in advance of you answering the question is I do follow two or three silver companies. I don't follow many. They're generally very high grade situations. And one thing I can tell you, a perfect example is the company I've followed since inception, Silvercrest. You look at these type of shoots, you don't need a very large footprint to add ounces up when you're putting up 4-digit numbers. I mean, the shoots can be relatively small and still actually have a fair amount of ounces in them. But can you make any comments in terms of timelines, that sort of thing, Mike?
Maybe I'll talk about the widths there. So if you look at that Animus trend where there was 8 ore shoots over 3.5 kilometers that produced, the bulk of the district's historic production. Some of them are very large ore shoots. Some of them are narrow ore shoots. There's everything in between on an epithermal project like this. It's very similar to San Dimas, very similar to Las Chispas. It does vary. The goal is to find some of the larger ore shoots to build ounces very quickly into a resource. And I think on Napoleon, what we're starting to find is these seem to have depth, and they seem to have good volume to them, and we're going to continue to find more shoots, and some of them are going to be a bit smaller, and some of them are going to very likely be some of the larger ore shoots. So the key is that we have the entire district to explore. As I said, over 75 kilometers of veins, and where those veins dilate and kink, we start to see the potential for ore shoots, and so our job is to drill those. With regards to the timeline, let's just say that everything went very, very well for us, and next week we decided that we wanted to execute on the option and get into production as soon as we could. It would probably be between 3, let's say, an outside, maybe 3 to 6 months of getting everything really working well on the mill, and that's based on our visits with Simon Smirlick from Senko and other technical review that we did initially. It's not a turnkey, but it's not that it's not a multi-year build. It's a matter of basically getting our ducks in a row there, and bringing the right team down to kind of optimize everything. And there is a scenario as well where we would execute the options and build our own mill, build a better mill, and one that would probably be in line with the San Dimas in terms of capacity, and that would be in excess of 1,000 tons per day, something like that. But the key to having the mill there gives us that shortcut to production, but it also gives us it also demonstrates that the potential to go into production is pretty clear, and that we have the permits and the HEDO agreements already in place there. So even if we were to decide to build a larger mill, we can kind of piggyback on the existing infrastructure there.
And a question for John. Obviously the end game is, as you pointed out in the reasons to buy Regulus, is a sale of the company. You've got this complicated, or certainly complicated looking tenure situation where you've got a piece here, a piece there, a piece over here. Is there any other entity other than the obvious one, your neighbor, that you could potentially do deals with, or is this sort of a situation where the guys next door, who I'm sure think they're the only obvious buyer, in your opinion, are they the only obvious buyer? Are you having conversations with others, or is there interest from other companies?
Great question on this, and obviously want to have to be a little careful about how we can answer that question with the interaction we have with groups on this. But it's really nice to have an obvious buyer next door. Yeah. That's always great, and that's one of the points we noted, that they're running out of ore. It's logical for them to make that transition into a larger sulfide deposit. We believe that our portion of the deposit is very integral to developing that in the best and most profitable way going forward. So a lot of what we focus on is strengthening our hand in that poker match, if you will, as we move forward. But it's also very important for us to attract other suitors. on this to keep the parties next door honest. And keep in mind the party, it's a joint venture called Comalaichi, and as I mentioned, it's three different companies that are involved in it. So they each all have their different interests and capacities and maybe their own positions and where they would like to be in participating in a future consolidation of the district as well. But one of the things that's been very encouraging on this is that due to the size of the deposit we have, and particularly as we're beginning to reveal the characteristics like very low strip and very close to the surface and high grade weighted on the top on this, is this project's attracting a lot of interest from major companies. And a typical process is that we go under CA with groups. I can say we have more than double-digit number of companies under CA that are looking at us. It doesn't imply they're all interested parties. There are a lot of data miners in there as well. But these are major copper companies, major gold companies, a surprising number of groups that are more like the royalty companies or even large private equity firms that are looking for participation in a large project. And particularly when we look at some of the metal traders or the large PE funds on this, this is an attractive opportunity for them because they could participate in the project by acquiring us, but they're not natural operators and they need an operator. So they need a partner to go forward. And we have 2 or 3 obvious partners in the immediate neighborhoods. So it is a complex game that we're starting on this. But it to us, all the hallmarks of the project and the characteristics of the project really kind of beg for it to become a very large project, the type large project that would probably be split between 2 or 3 major companies, and some of the other parties in the area might want to try to hang on for a position within it. But it really, this is kind of a big company type project going forward. So surprising amount of interest too from the gold companies on this. And I think many people are aware that some of the gold companies have been openly indicating that they would like to have increased copper exposure on this. And some of them are more blatant about how they do it. All of them behind the scenes talk about not minding having a little bit of copper, but it needs to be copper exposure that has some precious metal component to it. And that's exactly what we have. And it's not just as a hedge on gold price with the copper. As we discuss this with these type of groups, what we realize is what they're really interested in is large, long life mines. It's a lot easier to increase the size of a Newmont or a Barrick by putting a large project in that's going to last several decades. The 10-year mine lives of high-grade gold projects are great if you hit your timing right, but there's a lot of start and stop issues with those as well, and they prefer to build a base for their company on these larger long life opportunities. So that's been the pleasant surprise in the last year with increased gold prices. The gold groups are definitely jumping on opportunities like this.
Okay, yeah, it sounds like 4D chess, but I know you've played it before, so I'm not concerned about it personally. Just one last question before we close out here, and this one's again for Greg. You start drilling, or at least you start moving the rigs in next month. I know that you've had crews out there for months, I think, really, on the different projects. So can we expect some news flow sort of in advance of drill results, which I assume we're not going to start seeing for 2.5, 3 months or something like that?
Yes, Eric. So after March, when we took measures and got all the expats out of the country, our Ethiopian team consists of about 35 workers, including about a dozen geos. They shut down initially, but then in late April, May, they started back up again. And they've done a tremendous amount of work, follow-up work to our geophysics, our airborne geophysics, a lot of detailed geological mapping and trenching and sampling. And all those results are now coming in. So we'll likely have a series of news on different targets that before we actually start drilling in October. Just the timing of assays coming in. We'll likely have some news on different targets before the end of September. And we're really happy with the amount of work that has been conducted over the last 5 months and to keep the project moving forward.
Just to close it out, because I put a scare in everybody with my talk, but because we are dealing with guys that are in on 3 different continents here. Can each of you, I know you mentioned yourself that there's backlog issues in, but Greg and Mike and John, how do things look in your regions in terms of the lab situation? I mean, does it look like things will be a little better for you than it will be for some of the North American projects when it comes to turnaround?
Shall I go first?
Sure.
Well, as I said, we have been submitting samples. It hasn't been a mass submission like when you're drilling, but we have had a steady stream of samples. Leaving the prep work is done in Ethiopia, and then we use ALS Chemex, and it's sent to their operations in Ireland. And there's been a slight slowdown earlier on due to COVID, but we haven't noticed anything in the last little while. It seems to be the regular turnaround time.
Okay. How about you, Mike? Does your stuff come up here?
Yeah, but it's it's slowed down a little bit, but we've been fairly happy with the outcome. I don't know if it, I could see it getting a little bit more crowded.
Right.
But yeah.
I believe yours is all in country, right, John? I don't think your samples actually leave Peru.
Yeah, our samples don't leave Peru, which is an advantage. And as you mentioned, there's been a very notable slowdown in both mines and in particular exploration activities. So the labs are hungry right now,
Right.
and they promise normal or even better than normal turnaround time. But to be honest, they haven't been tested, and they have to operate within their protocols as well too, with lower density workers. So best assumption right now is normal turnaround, maybe a little better.
Okay. Good to know. Well, I'd like to thank all of you for coming by and presenting to our viewers today. We will, of course, have replays available starting as soon as possible so that everybody gets a chance to listen to your presentations, and I will organize one-on-ones with each of you over the next few days, and we'll make those interviews available too. Thanks again. Thank you as well, obviously, viewers and attendees, for showing up for yet another MIF. I think we're going to have a really fun Q4 this year for a change. So everybody hang in there. I think we're all going to make some money here.